Okay, so I'm Emily,
And I'm Amanda.
and this is Expect. This is an app that we're pitching that's going to improve communication between ambulances and emergency room departments. So picture this, you're a nurse in the emergency room and you have patients coming in left and right and you're being pulled in 6 different directions. And you have the dispatch phone ringing and it's the ambulance with another incoming patient. And they're rattling off patient information to you and they say the blood pressure is 90/50. But because there's so much chaos in the background, you write down 150/90. The patient comes in, you realize how much you were off when you wrote down what you wrote down. And so now the patient plan of care is completely reconstructed. You have to get new medications, call new physicians and nurses, and every minute you're wasting prepping all these materials, the patient is deteriorating. This is all because of a simple miscommunication. But miscommunication in the healthcare field can sometimes mean life or death.
So sentinel events and patient safety risks increase during the handoff period. So this is when one service is transferring care to another service, for example, the EMTs to the ER nurse. So this information can be incomplete, misunderstood, or inaccurate. And in an environment as chaotic as the emergency room, this greatly increases the risk of this happening. And sometimes the emergency room isn't prepared for what walks through the door. So the sentinel events are instances in the healthcare field where unanticipated events occur, and this can result in patient injury or even death, and it's not related to their original illness. So the thing about sentinel events is they are preventable, and as are these breakdowns in communication that we've been talking about. So in the United States, there's over 15,000 emergency medical services, over 5,000 emergency departments, and about 137 million ED visits per year. So all of these will benefit from the implementation of Expect.
So basically it's going to be a portal of communication between the ambulance and the emergency room department. And this is what we kind of want it to look like. And as you can see, it's really simple, straightforward, just 3 buttons. So what the ambulance will do is they'll create a patient profile, press that button right there, and they'll fill out all patient information that's important to their case, and then send it to the receiver, which is the emergency room department. And they'll be able to view all the necessary patient information and prepare for the patient. So when they press the create patient profile, this is what we want it to look like. Just patient information like name, age, sex, and then information related to their condition or injury. We're also going to have the option to send images or videos of the patient's condition, which is very unique to our app because there's currently no way for ambulances to send protected images of their patients to the emergency department. We're also going to have a body view option, so rather than describing where the patient's injury is, they can just tap it. Again, we just want it to be simple, easy, and efficient. So what this is going to do is reduce patient sentinel events and improve patient care ultimately. Communication is going to be fast, easy, and reliable and standardized through all emergency medical services and ambulances and emergency departments. So ambulances know what patient information they're sending and emergency departments know what they're receiving. And it's going to be efficient, so everything is going to be prepared for the patient when they arrive. And this is ultimately going to decrease costs because materials that they open are the only materials that they're going to need rather than opening things they won't need. And it'll decrease delay in treatment times, so the patients will be seen quicker, and ultimately it'll improve patient care. As healthcare professionals, that's our #1 priority. And appropriateness, so they'll prepare appropriate supplies, mobilize the appropriate personnel, and be able to educate the healthcare team with appropriate and accurate information. So the appealing aspect of our app is that it's very easy to implement. All the ambulances and emergency departments will need is a tablet and a phone with the application on it. We're going to do a trial period with hospitals that Amanda and I have developed relationships with through our clinicals, and during that period we'll receive feedback and be able to improve our app and then be able to devise a business and marketing plan to implement into all the big hospitals in the area. And that is our app. Are there any questions or comments?
Have you looked at what type of medical device it's going to be, whether it's class 2 or class 3? Because it's very controlled. If it becomes a class 2 device, which I think it is, you can't just put an app on a smartphone. It has to be a blocked phone that's dedicated to that purpose for cybersecurity and for HIPAA.
So Dave, our other team member, is experienced in encrypting.
Okay.
So encrypting is a type of firewall that hospitals use to prevent leakage of patient information, and he said he can take care of that. So we'll make sure that all HIPAA rules are followed.
And these devices won't be removed from the hospital at all.
They're not personal or anything, they're specific to the ambulance or the emergency department.
Yeah, I would do some research on that side, what the platform's actually going to be. The app itself, to build an app, is pretty straightforward and it looks really, really good. But the platform that it goes on, and I'm doing this right now, it's very difficult to get it through the FDA. They want to make, there's a huge amount of cybersecurity you have to go through, hoops you have to jump through. It's gotten a lot worse the last 2 years.
Okay.
The data, while it's input on the device, it's going to have to be stored somewhere in the cloud. Like I was wondering how you were thinking of the information moving from one device to another through the cloud.
Well, through my research, I've found that there are like text messaging that physicians have that's encrypted, so I know it's possible. I'm not sure the process that we're going to have to go through quite yet, but we will find that out when we get to that point.
Yeah, you'd need a lot more bandwidth than just text messaging. You would have to go through some kind of a cloud server, which then runs you into the HIPAA rules and the privacy rules. Can I ask a super question? I'm not a medical expert. Why not develop a set of things like this with like whiteboard things you can just mark things up and hand it off?
Like paper?
Yeah, not paper, maybe erase them. I don't know. Is something like this already?
There's nothing that's like technologically like this, and I think with the evolving healthcare world, everything is technology these days. And I mean, with a whiteboard, things could get erased or things aren't written down. The thing about this app is that it's standardized, so you have areas to fill out, and so you won't miss any information.
Yeah, now the computer science things coming into play, security of data, application protocol compatibility. Suddenly there's more than one hospital, different applications. You got to convert things. Things get lost in transmission. Who's going to be responsible if something gets not transmitted correctly? We can go on for hours on this. But some of it, I mean, it's necessary, but it might be useful to sort of scale back and say, is there a simpler, perhaps hopefully a non-technical way of solving the problem before you dive into a technical solution?
I mean, right now there are paper and different ways of transmitting information between EMS and emergency rooms. Right now it's mostly phone, and they call, and the charge nurse writes down all the information. But
what about just having tablets where you code this stuff and just give the tablet to the hospital person instead of something going out into the cloud? It would probably make
Getting information in advance, I think that's really
I think you can overcome that. I mean,
that part.
I think you can overcome that problem.
Right.
The information
it's been
in the
done,
cloud.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think I agree with what he's saying in that your core issue is you're trying to minimize transcription or any type of error from occurring in the state of the actual ambulance to when the patient is actually delivered to the ED. So
And we also just want the information to be transmitted in advance so they are prepared. That was another big part of our goal here.
And I think the challenge that hospital information systems have, and interestingly, my husband's actually working on a group of physicians, like 600 of them that are trying to interact with docs, with hospitals. And the challenge that occurs is different peripheral groups have, for example, which ambulance will have access to this. So you're setting up a system, a large-scale solution, but it's not necessarily the case that every single ambulance that will work with your hospital will have access to those devices. So there's some fundamental sort of structural issues, whereas if you, I think there's just so many layers to it that if you step back with this and look at your core problem, which is spot on, there's a lot of activity that occurs that could be misrepresented. Maybe the solution wouldn't be to tap into the medical information and transporting it, but rather collect it in a digitized fashion efficiently and send it.
Yeah,
Because there's so many layers of HIPAA,
Yeah.
and it's just getting bigger.
The other big thing that's missing is just to get like an ECG out of the field into the hospital, so a cardiologist or an ER doc can say, get the cath lab ready. That doesn't exist very well right now, and the bigger problem is, even in smaller towns, none of their systems communicate. So you can just say, I'm just going to send a cellular signal up and it's going to get somewhere, but it just doesn't connect. And the bandwidth of data that's needed for a doc to look at it, it's pretty large data chunks too. So there's a lot of technical issues, I think, not so much when you get it to the hospital, but while you're out in the field trying to get it to the hospital, that's where I really focus a lot of energy.
Yeah. I think the thing that I would say, because I worked with hospitals for 27 years, in many cases, we've completely over-engineered stuff.
Yeah.
What used to be a really nice solution to sending a quick email to a floor, a quick email here or there, became over-engineered. We almost paralyzed ourselves with so many layers of bureaucracy. So I would say just try to keep looking at this with a fresh set of eyes and keep reminding yourself what the core problem is. Because if you have a simple solution, I think that's going to be much more successful than an elaborate one, because we've already paralyzed ourselves with too many layers of technology.
I would just add to that and say, when I think about the core problem, you're talking about handoffs and transitions of care, and you're absolutely right. That's where sentinel events occur. That's where things fall through the crack. So I wonder a little bit about your use case, because actually, in terms of pre-arrival, to hospital emergency departments, in our electronic medical record, we have a whole pre-arrival note functionality. We do receive, EKGs from the field that are embedded in the electronic record. So I wonder if your use case in terms of providing for enhanced patient safety and handoffs and transitions of care is a great idea, and this is a great tool to perhaps develop for that. But is the demand for this the greatest between the EMS community and the hospital emergency department, or is that already being solved through hospital-based EMRs, and maybe it is some of the other things that I think I saw described in your written materials, the handoff between the PCP and the specialist, or the physician's office and home care and therapy. So there's lots of other potential use cases for the technology, and so I would say, like, maybe not simplify it, but take a broader step back and say, is the use case really on point?
Right. We started with, because I got this idea from, I work at Shriners right now. I have my practicum there. And we had a patient come in.
That's why you had the burn picture.
Right.
We have it in
Hence the burn.
Yeah, sorry.
So we had a patient come in. We got report from Mass General Emergency Department, and they aren't experienced with burns, so they said it was this big circumferential 20% burn or whatever. And the patient came in, and it was this teeny tiny thing. So we
mobilized resources.
We opened all these materials, got everything ready, had these physicians come, and I do overnight, so it was like 3 in the morning, and the patient got there, and we were just, not only can we be underprepared, but we can be over-prepared, and not necessarily that it's a bad thing, but I think the very useful thing in this is to be able to take images, which is something that doesn't really happen. So I think it
Which would have prevented you from calling
Right,
anybody.
right.
Well, it's a
exactly.
cost issue. it costs the hospital money.
Exactly, yeah, and that adds up with every admission.
I threw one comment. You did not mention in your presentation anywhere that one of the things was advanced transmission of information, which makes a difference in where you build your solution. So if you pitch this again, just make sure you emphasize the whole point about this being advanced
Okay.
transmission. But I do want to second Amy's point. I think about this a lot. As a computer scientist, information scientist, and an entrepreneur, there's always a tendency, particularly computer science people, to over-engineer solutions. They want an app for everything. Sometimes you don't need an app to solve a problem. I think I want to go back to what Amy said. I completely agree with that. Study the problem. Figure out what the 20% of the root causes cause you the most problem and fix them somehow. It could be a business process change, it could be procedural change, it doesn't have to be technology. Just be a little bit mindful of that, you don't over-engineer the solution.
And I think your name for the app is cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Our time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Nice
you.
job.